amazing show planned out for you today, and I really hope you enjoy it. Today's guest is Kanikki Jakarta. Kanikki Jakarta is the first African-American Poet Laureate of Alexandria, Virginia. She's an award-winning performance poet who has toured the U.S. and the U.K. Kaneki is the author of 3 novels, 2 poetry collections, a memoir, a short story, poetry collections entitled Alabama Girl, Virginia Woman, and the co-author of The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing Volume 2. Ms. Jakarta has been interviewed and featured in newspapers and magazines. She has been featured on podcasts, radio stations, and TV stations. She presents poets and platforms under the umbrella of a weekly online woman-led artistic experience entitled Keep the Mic On, where she's the co-founder. If you think that something she says on the mic might change your life, you're probably right.
Let's start at the beginning of your story. What made you want to become a writer?
I've always been a writer, really. I always liked Dr. Seuss. So that's what made me really want to become a poet. I was always a talker. So I think in school I was talking too much. So I decided to write things down. When I was 13, my mom gave me a 5-year diary. So I started writing in there. And then I started writing poetry in 3rd grade. So I've been a writer for a long time.
What does the process of becoming a poet laureate look like?
It looks different for each city or state or county. But for the Alexandria City Poet Laureate, I had to write why I thought I would be a good poet laureate. I had to submit 10 anonymous poems to a board, and then they chose, based on the poetry, they chose who they wanted to see in an interview. And then I had to sit in a board of, I think it was 7 or 8 board members that I had to sit with and talk about my process and what I wanted to do in the role. And it was basically so much great competition this particular year because it was 3 finalists and then we had to come back again. And then I was chosen from the board based on what my poetry and what I wrote that I wanted to do for the city.
Wow, that's really interesting to hear. You've worked with a lot of song artists. Who did you work with and what was it like?
Um, who have I worked with? I haven't done a lot of collaborating. I collaborated on a book this past year. It's 2021 and 2020. I collaborated on The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing with Laura DeFranco. And we also present an event called Open Mics and Spotlights that we do. We're doing it virtual right now. And then I've done some work with my husband, like some recording and some recording with busboys and poets as well. So not a lot of collaboration.
As the first African American poet laureate in Alexandria, what types of struggles did you face to get where you are now?
I think my struggles came before I was poet laureate. It wasn't really struggles, but there was a lot of challenges. I always tell people that I didn't get the poet laureate title the first time I tried out for it. This is my 3rd time around. So I saw the title and I thought I would be a good representation for the city. But I was doing a lot of events in DC at the time. So I had to move my events over to Alexandria, Virginia and start presenting things there. And I think just the challenge was getting the people in the city to recognize who I was, because I was more known in DC than I was in the own city that I lived in, because I basically just integrated into the city that had poetry already. So it was no poetry. So I think the challenge was bringing poetry to Alexandria, letting the city know that there are talented poets here so that we don't have to leave the city to take our poetry somewhere else. So the challenge was starting from scratch.
Who were some of the people who helped you get where you were today?
My mama, it was very inspirational to me. My dad, especially, because he liked Maya Angelou poetry and read a lot of it to me. My mother, she read a lot of Nikki Giovanni poetry to me and actually named me Kanikki because she loved Nikki Giovanni. And just, friends and family encouraging me along the way.
Our final question is that does being the first Black woman to be the Poet Laureate make you hopeful about Alexandria and the future of this country?
It does. And I wasn't thinking about being the first African American or Black poet laureate. I was just thinking about being the poet laureate. But then in these times, with a lot of things happening with Black Lives Matter movement, and I've realized that I have a bigger title than I realized that I had. So I see that it gives a lot of people hope being in this. I guess it's kind of odd being the first Black person to do something in a city that in a country where we're supposed to be so advanced now. It's 20, it was 2019 when I took this title, but it does give me hope. And I'm hoping that after I leave this position that there'll be more women and more men of color.
Thank you for being on the show. It was great to have you and hear about your story. We hope you have a good day and are very appreciative of you coming here.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope we do more things together in the future.
Yeah, same.
Well, that was a fun interview. Let's see what you learned about our guest. It's time for a trivia game. Now, here's the one rule you'll need to follow. You have 4 questions and you must answer each of them in 5 seconds. Simple enough. Now, let's begin. Question 1. Who was Kaneki named after? Is it A. Nikki Haley, B. Nikki Giovanni, or C. Nikki Reed? The answer is B. Good job. Question 2. How did she get started writing poetry? Is it A. Writing in a diary, B. As an assignment, or C. A friend who wrote poetry? The answer is A. Well done. Question 3. How many times did it take for Kaneki to become a poet laureate? Is it A, the first time, B, the 5th time, or C, the 3rd time? The answer is C. Good job. Question 4. Who was her favorite children's author? Is it A, Mary Pope Osborne, B, Dr. Seuss, or C, J.K. Rowling? The answer is B. Good job. Well, that is all for our trivia game. Thank you for participating.
Negligence was never meant to last. So clear away the wreckage of the past. You clear away the wreckage of the past. And your current cause belongs to us. This is the day you've been working for. This is the day you've been hurting for. This is the day you've been aching for. This is the day you've been waiting for. Thought it was all on the horizon, but it was really all inside you.
ArtsEnPower is a youth-hosted and produced web series that highlights the work of performing, literary, and visual artists using their art to better the world. ArtsEnPower is a project through Montgomery Community Media's Youth Media Academy. Learn how you can support this and other MCM programs by visiting us at mymcmedia.org.